What's up, Giants fans? Welcome to a very special episode of Giants Talk. This is an emergency podcast coming to you immediately after our last episode as the Giants got their guy. Tony Vitello is donning a new shade of orange coming to San Francisco from Knoxville, Tennessee. We'll break it down with our instant reaction right here on Giants Talk. Before we get started, Giants Talk is presented by Mancini Sleep World. Tariff-free savings are happening right now at Mancini Sleep World. Get 40% off top brand mattresses like Sealy and Beauty Rest. Mancini's makes sure you sleep soundly in every way. That means 365-night comfort guarantee, free next day delivery plus old mattress removal, and a best price guarantee. Shop sleepworld.com. All right, Alex, here we are. The Giants have checked off the biggest order of business this offseason, and that was finding a new manager after parting ways with Bob Melvin at the end of the 2025 season. It's been a lot of speculation. Feels like it's been a long time coming. Here it is. Tony Vitello is locked in.
He is Buster Posey's guy. I think it's most important to note he's Buster Posey's partner in this. You hope for a long, long time, like Brian Sabean and Bruce Bochy. But regardless, I think Buster has tied himself to one of the most fascinating managerial decisions we've seen. And really, I don't think it's crazy to say MLB history. I mean, this is a guy who's coming straight from fall scrimmages in Knoxville, Tennessee, to take over the San Francisco Giants. Did not play professional baseball, has not coached professional baseball. He is the first to ever do that. I mean, there are other guys who have come from college. Pat Murphy has been really successful doing it most recently, but he spent over a decade in professional baseball, was a bench coach, was an interim manager in San Diego. So he has that experience. Tony is coming straight from Knoxville, Tennessee, to San Francisco to take over, and he is Buster's handpicked guy here. I mean, Buster let go of Bob Melvin after picking up the option for next year, and I think Tony's someone he has known about for a while. They met, it seems like, in Colorado in September, and certainly the Giants have a thing for Tennessee players lately, and Tony wanted to see some of those guys. So now he's going to get to manage them, and I think no matter what, it's just going to be fascinating. I mean, there's going to be a lot of Gabe Kapler comparisons because, look, first of all, this is a great day for those of us in like the always having a dark beard community. We lost Gabe, we lost Brandon Crawford. Tony seems to be a constant bearded guy. But in a lot of ways, I think this is going to be similar to Gabe, that every part of that, whether good or bad, was interesting. Mm-hmm. And some of the downtimes I thought were more interesting than some of the good times. And some of the challenging unwritten rules and going after other teams, stuff like that, was really interesting. So I think for Tony, it's going to be similar. I mean, however long this lasts, it's going to be fascinating.
We haven't got a chance to meet him yet. In my understanding, he'll be introduced next Thursday. But from his quote in the Giants press release, he said, "I can't wait to get started and work to establish a culture that makes the Giants faithful proud." And that's exactly encapsulating, I think, what makes me most excited about this hire is just an overall change of culture. We're sitting here in an NL West where the Dodgers have put together a Death Star. They're in the World Series again, doing damage again. And the Giants need to find a way to leverage a different strategy, strike back like the Rebels. They need to be the fiery underdogs. They need to establish a new type of presence in the NL West. And I think starting with such a dynamic, fresh start with a brand new manager, no experience, seems like the way to do it. What's your first immediate reaction, Alex?
Well, I've never watched Star Wars, so I don't know if you have anything else for me that would further clarify. No, I think that's a good point. And interestingly, that, because of the World Series and the timing of all this, he won't be introduced until the day off between Game 5 and Game 6 of the World Series. There's a chance that Tony Vitello is introduced is like this, how do you get back into contention move while the Dodgers are either on their way or have already won a second straight title. So the timing of this is interesting in a lot of ways. My main reaction, and this is not, I know we're not supposed to do that do this on podcasts or as analysis. I think we all just have to be honest. We don't know. We just don't know how this is going to turn out. I mean, this is a college coach who is coming to take over a Major League Baseball team. He has never been in spring training, let alone run a spring training. He's never gone through 162 games. everything I've heard about him, tremendously energetic, tremendously charismatic. You saw the things Buster said about him, some of the traits that stand out. I just think we also, and I think we've seen some of the reaction, the very positive reaction from Giants fans who are going to be thrilled to see some of the, we see him jumping into the stands. We see him sliding in to take a photo with his team, going crazy after Drew Gilbert hits a home run. Like, we've seen a lot of that. I think we also have to be honest. We just don't know how this is going to go. This has never happened before in this particular way. And it's a risk, I think, for Buster, but also I would say for a team that's been right around 500 for 4 straight years, probably a risk worth taking. It's my initial reaction to this. I mean, I think they had to do something different, right? Like, they tried Gabe. That ultimately didn't work out for a lot of different reasons. One very successful year. They did the complete opposite in Bob Melvin. That did not work out as well. So I think this is, you could have gone in the middle somewhere. This is just like, go completely off the board, try something new. If it works, Buster's going to be a trailblazer. Like, it's going to be, we're going to see other guys get this opportunity. I think there were some other college coaches they might have thought about as well, just to, talk to potentially. I don't know. We don't know at this point who they did, but if it works, this is going to be kind of the norm. Maybe guys going back and forth. If it doesn't work, I don't know what's lost necessarily, because they just hang around 500 every year anyway. So yeah. I guess that's my first reaction to this.
That makes a lot of sense. You talk about how different he is from Bob Melvin. And I don't know, the immediate thing for me, from everything I've seen, watching interviews with him, catching up on who is this Tony Vitello guy over the past week, is how different he is than Buster Posey. I mean, these guys are going to be traveling this journey hand in hand, neck in neck, leading this organization we love for the next, who knows how long, hopefully very long time. And when I see this just fiery, pushing the envelope, making enemies coaching style that he's had with the Tennessee Volunteers, it just feels so different than Buster. So I don't know. Hopefully they're bringing out different sides of each other. Hopefully they just combine then to be exactly what this team needs. But I don't know. Melvin seemed much more like what I imagine Buster Posey would be if he were managing.
Yeah, and I think Buster liked Melvin for the most part. I mean, he was very clear when he picked up that option. Like, I've watched him for a few months. I think they got along up until the end. I don't think they ever didn't get along. As Buster just had to fire him, So one thing I'll say about Buster is he's like really, really, really competitive. He is. Mm-hmm. Him and Brandon Crawford never quite got, I think, and that's obvious, right? Like, he's one of the best catchers of all time. You have to be competitive, but there's like an internal fire with him that doesn't come out this way. Like, he's not a bat flipper. He's not demonstrative, but there's an internal fire. And those are the two guys that all stood out to me. I mean, you hear stories about them in the minor leagues, in college, behind the scenes, some of the stuff. They're extremely competitive guys, and it just comes out in a different way. So I think I think Tony and Buster will see a lot of things the same way. It's just, you're not going to see, you can kind of envision, right? Like, if this does succeed and there's a celebration, one is going to be way over the top, and he's going to have to kind of pull the other one in to be a little bit over, because Buster's never been over the top in anything. So it's going to be interesting, but I think this is, again, where it's a unique situation for Buster in that he has like kind of the complete faith of everybody, because he's Buster Posey, to do what he wants for the first 2-3 years here. And so it is just kind of, you put trust in the fact that he's gotten to know this guy over the last few weeks and last few months. And they've clearly had a lot of conversations, and he feels like this is the right choice. Again, we don't know if it will be, but I think one important thing here, and it was one reason I never quite understood the picking up the Melvin option in the first place, was Buster probably gets one shot at this. Not saying he's ever going to get fired or anything, but I just, you probably get one shot to do this your way. And that was somebody he inherited. That was the staff he inherited. This is now, he has had a full year to look at everything, figure out what he wants. And this is who he wants. This is what he wants going forward. Certainly he had interest in Nick Hundley as well, who pulled out of the running. But I think that's the important thing, is this is like, the Giants handed the keys to Buster a year ago and said, this is your organization now. Decide everything. Yeah. And he's done that, like, even behind the scenes with little things. But Now, with the biggest decision, you kind of just have to put your faith in him if you're a Giants fan or if you work for the organization, and hope that he made the right move. I do want to ask you one other thing, because the book behind me is reminding me of this, the orange, and behind you. Do they have to bring back the old City Connects?
I mean, that orange and white look certainly leans a lot more towards what Tony Vitello is used to. I say
Little
yeah. I
Tennessee.
say go for it, or at least roll out a new one that is more adjacent with that look. Let's leave the purple unis behind. Adamas can still wear his purple. I don't care about that. He looks good in it. But let's bring him back officially.
I'm seeing all this orange behind us, and I'm also like seeing the photos on my screen still of Tennessee Tony Vitello, and I'm like, this is pretty close to the
It is.
yeah
It
creamsicle.
really is.
So I don't. Nike would probably say no, but what was the record in those? Like 700 winning percentage?
750, I think. They were good. And you know what? Everything it takes, whatever it takes in 2026, let's get winning.
Easy way, I think, to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, to
Put them in a familiar shade of orange.
curry some extra favor. We kind of talked a little bit about his coaching style. You know, he's fiery. He's pushing the envelope. What else is he bringing to this team? Because obviously the duties of a head coach for a college baseball team are very different than a professional Major League Baseball manager. But where does that overlap? Like, what are the Giants looking for in a guy like this?
I've always said that job is a CEO job, and which is why if Buster would have said, I want to bring Bruce Bochy back and he's going to have a young coaching staff, I would have been, I don't think you and I never thought that was going to be the case, but like, it's just somebody overlooking everything. So, and I think that's sometimes when people run into trouble, is trying to do too many little things. And I think it's important just to overlook everything. A huge part of your job is just talking to the media, talking to the fan base, talking to your players. Everything I've heard from every single person I've talked to in the last couple of weeks is that Tony Vitello is wildly charismatic. He's going to be very good at all that stuff. I think he's going to win the press conference. I think it's going to be, in that respect, going to be great. I think he's going to do a really good job of connecting with players, because he's maybe the best recruiter in the country. Like, his job is to go in for a long time, and maybe not as much now, but his job for a long time has been to go into living rooms and tell people why they should come play for you or play for the guy you work for. He's really, really good at that, going back 2 decades. So I think he'll find a way to connect with players. The other thing that stood out to me that Buster mentioned in the press release, he said he has a commitment to developing players that stood out. And that is really important for a team that hasn't done a great job of that. We'll see how he's able to work hand in hand. I think one thing with Bob was he didn't get involved as much with, like, it was kind of like, who's on my roster, that's his way of doing it. I'm not saying that's the wrong way, but it was, who's on my roster, who am I managing here, what are my options here. I think Tony's probably going to be more involved with, like, okay, who's coming through A ball, who's coming through AA, who's coming through AAA. These guys are going to be here with me. Who's how can we help develop all those guys as well? And I do think a big thing is going to be development at the big league level. Like, you look at somebody like Elliot Ramos, who had a really rough year in left field. And I'm sure Buster looks at that and goes, like, how do you fix that? Because you're not going to option him. You're not going to move him. You're not going to DH him. So how do you fix that during the season? And part of the move here is hiring a guy who's used to every single day trying to help 19, 20, 21-year-olds get better. So I think that's a big part of this, is how do you fix Elliott's left field defense in season? Is a guy who just came from college, is that the right fit here, as opposed to, maybe the previous staff? And one thing we've heard from Buster is, I think there was a little displeasure with some of the pregame work the last few years, just maybe how targeted it was, what they were doing. So that, I think, is going to be huge with this hire.
Yeah, less about what can I do with the pieces I have, and more about let's improve the pieces I have. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of discussion about how that all translates to the big league level. So just for one vote of confidence, I want to read off a quote from one of the gnarliest guys in Major League Baseball. How else do you describe Max Scherzer? Max Scherzer
Gnarly.
played for him way back in the day. Max said, "I absolutely believe in him. He's to this day one of my closest friends, and I absolutely believe he's going to get it done at the big league level." And I believe he's a free agent this year, right? So
He
there'll
is.
be a discussion about that.
Is there a spot for a 40-something
Can
right
him and Verlander share
for the
a?
Hall of Fame? Yeah, but this is again. I mean, this is where I go back to we don't know. I think is the most important thing right now.
Mhm.
It's this is similar to like really if Buster had hired Nick Hundley, you'd be hearing the same quotes from former Giants. Like we'd probably have some of my friends played with him, so we'd be hearing the same. And this is no disrespect to any of those guys. I just think like you're. I think you're going to hear a lot of great things from people who have played for him. That's generally the way things work. I mean, I think even going back to Gabe, like wasn't Bryce Harper pretty complimentary
I think so.
of Gabe at times? So yeah, that's generally how things work. I think what we need to see is how is he in game? How is he with pitching changes? How does he handle a struggling closer? All of that. So that stuff we'll figure out. But the honeymoon, I think, is going to be pretty positive for a few months.
Yeah, I obviously this is a type of hire that is uniquely unfamiliar as a character to maybe people who listen to Giants talk, maybe just baseball fans who follow professional baseball exclusively. So I'd like to talk a little bit on today's episode about kind of what he has done for the Tennessee program because we hear a lot about how he's revolutionized what's going on over there. He's turned them into a powerhouse. But when you actually dive into kind of where they were before Tony Vitello took over and where they are now, it is jaw dropping. I mean, he took the Tennessee Volunteers from being a chronically 500 team to just within 2 seasons being a
Did you say
powerhouse.
chronically 500?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Does that ring a bell to any
I know,
Giants fans?
I know some guys.
Yeah, exactly. He ended his tenure there with a 341 and 131 record as head coach. Won a national championship in 2024 last June and has absolutely won over what appears to be a rabid college fan base. I don't know if you saw some of the reactions coming from Volunteers fans, coming from Knoxville, but he's like a legend out there. Did you see they were like mailing cases of mustard to Oracle Park?
Yeah, don't. Someone needs to explain that to me.
Yeah, some listeners are gonna have to come in and explain the mustard thing to us. But hey, it's very possible
Not
we
like
just
someone wasted $75, but
hey, you know what?
good for them.
They don't have to worry about condiments at Oracle Park for all season. The mustard is covered. But
Are you
it's
ranch? Like, why
possible.
mustard?
It's possible with how popular he is over there that the Giants just absorbed a fan base in Tennessee who's going to follow him over there. So hey, maybe some of you are listening. Let us know what's going on with that deal.
Yeah, good for the pot. I mean, we'll check our Tennessee numbers after after this one. Yeah, he's been remarkably successful. College World Series, I think 3 times in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
He has won their first national title, has really made him a powerhouse. I think the one thing, again, this goes back to a lot of this we don't know. What you can do in college is you can recruit and you can have the best players. What we do know is he will not have the best players in the National League West. Now,
Yeah.
he's going to have some very good players, but he's not going to have the best roster in the division. So that's the question. Like, what do you do when you're the underdog? What do you do when you're going up against the Dodgers and the Padres, who had their way with the Giants this season, and that was a big issue. So that I think is a big part of this is what can you do to help develop the Giants to the point where they're competitive with those teams? Because no matter what they do this offseason, they're not going to have the best roster going into next year. They might be chasing a 2-time champion. So it's starting fresh for him. But I think that's part of the appeal here is that he also seems like somebody who is going to, and I would imagine we will hear this a week from now. I think he's going to relish this opportunity to go at the Dodgers and be in this division. And certainly when you take this job, you know what's in front of you and you know what you're attacking. And I don't think anyone takes this job to be like, I was there for 5 years. I was the fourth wild card a couple times. Like, you don't do that. So he knows what's ahead of him, and he has been successful before in taking down big dogs. So we'll see. We'll see how successful he is here in doing that.
I like that you mentioned the Dodgers because based on his reputation around SEC baseball, the past few years we've had a lot of talk about it's Dodgers Padres rivalry now. The Giants aren't competing enough to be the rivals with the best team in baseball. I think rivalry is going to be back on the menu. I think we're going to be back to seeing some chippy moments. We're going to be pesky. And like he said, that culture change the team and fans want, it's going to be perfect for the rivalry.
I agree. I think that's one thing that probably helped him get this job is there's not going to be any backing down. And I'm not saying they rolled over against the Dodgers and Padres this year, but they just kind of looked overmatched.
Yeah.
It looked like, and we'd go into those series. I mean, you and I would go into those series being like, can they take 1 out of 3? Can they? And remember when they were trying to crawl back and they go to San Diego and just get smoked.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's about both those teams. I think it's about going in there and having, and I just don't think this team the last couple of years had maybe the right attitude going into Dodger Stadium and going into those series.
Yeah,
I think those are going to be huge for Tony Vitello. I don't think it's going to pretend like a lot of people do that this is just another series.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't, because I always hate that and even Gabe would do that. He'd go, every game is the same. And I'm like, no, I don't know. This is Friday night at home against the Dodgers. This is a big deal.
This is a big deal.
This is a big deal. And you need to treat it like it's a big deal. And I'm hopeful that he treats it like it's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a big deal, obviously, for Giants fans. And it's a big deal for Buster Posey, this signing. So kind of want to end with, as we look at the impact this could have on the future of MLB managerial options. I mean, there was a ton of teams looking for new managers this offseason and not that many candidates. What could the legacy of this be? I mean, Buster Posey, like you said, could have anyone he wants. He's earned that kind of respect, loyalty, cachet as a president of baseball operations, as a GM, as an owner. But this is a lot. If this doesn't pan out, what's on the line here for Buster?
I think a lot. I think there's, he is potentially, like I said, a trailblazer here and potentially changing the way Major League Baseball hires managers. And it's interesting that it would be a guy who was so good at the college level, who is, I don't have the list in front of me, but I would imagine one of the best college players to ever be in this position, if not the best college player to ever be running a major league team. So it's interesting that he is the one who is making this move, but it is a risk. I mean, it is. We have no idea, and Buster has never given us any idea of whether this is a 4-year job for him, it's an 8-year job, it's a 30-year job, of what he wants to do. I would imagine there are other things he wants to do in life because he is capable of doing that. I would imagine he does not want to be at the ballpark every day for the next 10 years, in that this is just me speaking and, some informed speculation that I think he saw an organization that had lost its way and is trying to get him back on the right track. And at some point would love to hand over maybe that day to day and be like, okay, everything's fine. So, but this is his move to do that. And I have a hard time seeing him doing a year with Bob Melvin. And let's say I don't think it's going to be 2 with Tony, no matter how it goes. I think they're going to give him a real shot here to try to figure this out. But let's say it's 3 or 4 years and you go, oh, this didn't really work. And then him being like, okay, time to search for a new manager and let's try this again. I don't know. I just don't necessarily see that. So yeah. I think this is his move. This is his guy. He believes this will work. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot at stake for him.
Buster, not the only one taking a risk here. You talk about their fates are kind of tied. Tony Vitello leaving I don't want to say cushy, but a well-paid, well-respected role as the best college baseball head coach in America, I guess. He's got a lot to lose too.
I think there's much less risk for him here because what we've seen in other sports, and we haven't seen this here, but what we've seen consistently with, football, basketball, guys, college, and it hasn't worked a whole lot, which is why I think this is so fascinating because, I'm not as versed in Star Wars, but I am very well versed in college football coaches who jump to the NFL and go, oops, this maybe didn't.
You're going to say Fast and Furious.
That too. But this maybe didn't work. So I think that's what's so interesting here is for him, it's not as much of a risk, I don't think, because if this doesn't work for him, you tried it, you made history, you were a trailblazer, you get this opportunity at 47 to be a big league manager, something that I don't know if he ever thought would be there for him. I mean, we'll hear from him a week from now. But if this doesn't work, you go back to college. Yeah. And you go to, I mean, I was reading today, I think Texas A&M has made a run at him at times. You go to one of the top programs in the country and you again get your 3-4 million and you rebuild another college program. So I think the risk, I've seen some of that. This is a big risk from both sides. I think for Tony, there's not much risk. I think there's only upside for him here. That the upside here is that this works and you're a big league manager and you're a great big league manager and you've paved the way for other guys in your position to come through. You're maybe bringing some guys with you from Tennessee, or down the line, you're bringing some other college guys in. But the downside for him is if this doesn't work, he goes back to wherever, somewhere in the SEC or somewhere, and you coach college baseball again, and you do that for the rest of your life, and you're the king of another city like you were the king of Knoxville. Maybe it's Knoxville again down the line. Who knows? Yeah. But I think for the Giants, this is where it's more fascinating, and this is where the risk comes in. But again, for both of them, there's a lot of upside because what did you mention? You were describing Tony's when he took over a team of they were 500 for
Yeah.
So he's taken over this team that since 2001 has been 500.
Ironically, 500.
Yeah. So there's a lot of upside, I think, here. And the nice thing to take over after a season like this is like, if they win 86 games next year, everyone's going to be like, this was genius.
Yeah.
So
yeah, if they play up to what on paper they should,
yeah,
it's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right now in October of 2025, with a lot of time ahead of us potentially with this Buster Posey, Tony Vitello partnership, excitement is high, vibes are high. The Giants fandom feels like on cloud nine. Seems like reactions have been great. It's going to be fascinating to see where it goes from here.
Yeah. I think there's a lot ahead of them. So there's, one interesting thing about this is you're not like when Bruce Bochy came up from San Diego and he calls Tim Flannery and he goes, "Hey, do you have one more ride in you?" And he gets to San Francisco and he knows he'd been managing against Dave Righetti and Ron Wotus. He knew these guys. Bob Melvin came up here with Matt Williams and Ryan Christensen, and he had some of these guys. That's going to be a fascinating part of this, is what kind of coaching staff gets put together. I think it's going to be crucial. He has at least somebody there, whether it's his bench coach or whether it's some other title, that he has somebody there who is very experienced. I think there are some guys who have been managers who have been let go, who maybe that was part of this for Buster, is talking to some of those guys and seeing who can be his bench coach potentially, who can be part of this to help him out here. And then, there are some guys in house he probably should take a look at keeping. I mean, Mark Hallberg's been part of the last two staffs. He's very well thought of. We've brought him up as a potential manager. JP Martinez, for me, the easiest move here is just bring back your pitching coach. We know he's good at it. We know he just had a good year with those guys. He wants to be here. So I'm curious to see how things like that play out. Like, just turn the pitching over to the guy who's done it already.
Yeah.
So there will be stuff like that. Who does he bring with him from Tennessee? And how does this work? And I'll end with this. I mean, how does this work? He's a great recruiter, and we know from last offseason that Willie Adames and Justin Verlander both said, like, when Buster Posey calls you, you're kind of like, okay, I'm in. So what does this mean for the Giants in free agency, who
they've got holes to fill?
They got holes to fill, and they have a recent history of striking out quite a bit. So. Yeah. Look, ultimately, these deals, something we talk about all the time, they come down to almost always the biggest contract. But will those two in a room be enough to sway some guys who potentially would have gone elsewhere for similar money? Or will those two be enough to sway some guys into even coming to visit San Francisco when they didn't think it was an option? So I think that'll be fascinating.
Yeah. Well, we'll have a keen eye out the rest of the offseason, seeing as these coaching decisions get made, watching as free agency and trades potentially happen, and seeing, I don't know, how further reactions come to Tony Vitello taking over as the skipper of the San Francisco Giants. Until then, don't forget to subscribe to Giants Talk wherever you listen to your podcast. Go ahead, give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Buy Alex's book, The Franchise, available on paperback now. And yeah, hang along with us here on Giants Talk as we figure this out together. Because I, for one, I'm excited.
It's I think it's fascinating, and I think I get I'm almost the one who comes here and says, let's pump the brakes, let's see how this works actually. But I understand the excitement. This is something new, and I think this is an organization that you kind of look at it and you go like, this is probably the one organization in Major League Baseball right now where you go like, yeah, you should try something like this. Because this is what you've done the last 4 years has been exactly the same. And even before 21, a lot of that was exactly the same. So Buster's taking a big swing, but I think this is the time to do it.
See how this goes.